You have arrived at the third and final chapter in the saga that is the Knives of Alaska Featherlight Hunter. Guys, if you're looking for a small folding hunting knife, you're going to want to see this. It's important. Stay tuned. Hi gang, Rob here. It is the evening of 18 March 2014. And yes, it is time for chapter 3 of my review slash relationship slash project in frustration with the Knives of Alaska Folding Hunter. I will link in the description the first 2 chapters of this saga, and I will also annotate the video for those of you watching on annotate viewable devices right up here in the left hand corner. I will recap for you quickly. The Knives of Alaska Featherlight Hunter came to me as a sharpening project for a customer, Chris, Sequel 707. On Instagram and I think on YouTube also. I sharpened his knife, which he informed me before he sent it to me had a small chip in the cutting edge right here. Just wanted me to be aware of it and asked if he, needed to spend any more money to get that sharpened out. I told him no, it would probably come out in the normal course of sharpening anyway. So that's all we knew to start with. I sharpened the knife, did my usual. Actually, I think I sharpened it a little leaner than usual because of its intended purpose and because the blade was a little bit thick behind the edge. So I backed the angles off so you could have a vicious skinner slash gutting knife. Got all the way done, took the knife apart to clean it, found actually some visible scratching in the tang of the blade just outside the periphery of the handle. And then when I got inside, found the rather nicely designed brass pressed in bushing that acts as a pivot washer. I found that it had a very deep gouge in it, like the tooling from assembly had damaged it and someone put it back together and shipped it like that. That was a little disturbing. I did sand and polish the bushing, and the knife did behave okay. Then I got it all back together, cycled it a few times, made sure it was working right, and looked at the cutting edge, and voila! The chip was back. Yeah, it was crashing into this middle standoff. This area of the blade tang acts as the blade stop using the first standoff right here, but it was cut incorrectly and the cutting edge ran into the second standoff. Told Chris what was going on. We sent the knife back to Knives of Alaska so that they could repair or replace it. A few weeks went by. In early February they told us that they were really busy because of the holidays that were over a month and a half before that. But finally a package arrived back to me because Chris wanted me to sharpen the knife as originally planned. And opened this beautifully packaged box from Knives of Alaska, and what did I find? Fast forward to chapter 2, I found the same knife with the same chip in the blade and this middle standoff. Sanded down for blade clearance, opened the knife up. They had pressed in a new brass bushing and installed the hokiest clip I've ever seen on a folding knife. Put the knife back together, and the blade was almost touching the liner to the right as you're looking at it. Yeah. We contacted Knives of Alaska again, told them that that was unacceptable. Please send a new knife. And this time, do not send one with the clip because the clip was ridiculous. And, they're aware by now that there have already been 2 videos on this knife. from my channel. They're aware that a couple thousand people are waiting to see if they can build a knife. And fast forward to present day. I've actually had this knife, which is the replacement, for a couple weeks. And I'm going to tell you about it. It was apparent this time that this is a new knife. Sans clip, and we have a blade that with a full-size pillar and that does not crash into it. All good. Sort of. By the way, although their service was not prompt, when Knives of Alaska sent to me this replacement knife, and by the way, this is now my knife. Chris wisely traded it to me for some future sharpening. And I'm kind of glad he did, because the poor guy, he was just in the middle of a nightmare. I'm a big boy, I can take it. Anyhow, they sent me the knife and they sent me a check for $10, which is 2 return shipping costs. So, you know what? Kudos to Knives of Alaska. They're not the fastest in the world, but ultimately their customer service is good. That's about where the good ends, however. When I took this knife out of the box, here's what I found. Centering now is as close as I can get it, and I've got this pivot set up really tight. But the replacement knife was off center to the left, pretty bad. And as you guys know, on an adjustable pivot, the tighter you make it, the more it's going to pull the blade toward the locking leaf side of the knife because you're overcoming the tension of the lock, pushing it that direction. So, you know, okay, it was off center, no big deal. I sharpened it, got on with my life. Now let's talk about the blade and the edge. Because I want you guys to take a close look at this. This blade is ground at 13 degrees secondary bevel, and then I wouldn't really call it a micro bevel, but there is another bevel at 18 degrees, and if the light will catch this right, you can see that that last bevel is more than micro. It's almost half as broad as the secondary bevel, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason this bevel is so broad, particularly at the base. Here's I think what happened. In order to create the clearance they needed from the standoff, they just sharpened the blade down to nothing, so it wasn't as broad in this dimension. What that gives us is a really thick chunk of D2 right behind the edge. So in order to make it slice, I had to make a pretty broad bevel at a pretty low angle. And then this problem. Notice at the very base of the edge on the right side of the blade, it gets even broader and it really goes up into the stock. Well, I had to do that to clean up the big dig the sharpener made at the factory. I mean, it was horrendous. It was horrendous. You had you had the factory edge bevel going really almost right up to where you see my new bevel, and then out here at the tip, it was maybe like a 32nd of an inch in breadth. I mean, my 13-year-old daughter could have done a better job with a belt sander and a knife blade than these guys did. Okay, now when we got inside the knife, we got a nice clean brass bushing, no issues there. The lockup is, I think, pretty darn early for a liner lock, which that's okay. I've actually thought about taking some material off that lock bar, and I'm going to show you why. Now, let's look at how free I've got the lock fully disengaged, and I'm shaking the knife pretty vigorously because it doesn't exactly drop free. That's how tight I have to make it just to make the blade center up where it is and eliminate all the side-to-side blade play. However, look closely and listen. I'm going to move the blade vertically. There is a not huge but noticeable amount of vertical play. Most probably that's because the locking leaf, instead of contacting the tang of the blade out here on a 45-degree ray from the center of the pivot, is contacting it more down here, sort of in line with the center of the pivot, which allows the blade to rock. I could probably go in there and reshape that locking leaf more like this instead of like that, so it contacts right on the edge of the tang and won't let the blade rock. It might also let it seat a little deeper into the blade tang as well. But you know, guys, how many things have to be wrong with the knife before you call it junk? I don't know. This knife, guys, sells, and Knives of Alaska sells primarily on their own website, by the way. Not too many retailers, if any, carry their product line, wisely so. It sells for like $79.95 on their website. It is American made. It's got a G10 handle. It's partially steel lined. It's got a well-engineered but poorly executed brass bushing pivot system. The blade shape is great for its intended purpose. It is made out of D2 steel, although I don't know why you bead blast finish D2 that's going to be wet, bloody inside animals. I'm not quite sure why you do that. I guess if you have a good supply of animal tallow to keep it coated in, you might preserve that D2 pretty well. But the blade is far too thick as they've executed it here to clear that standoff. Far too thick. My edge bevel shouldn't be that broad. That's ridiculous. But it has to be to cut. The pivot is... I've got this lock bar all the way released, and it's smooth, but I got to put so much tension on this pivot to keep the blade remotely in the center of the handle. I mean, let's be honest, shall we? If you didn't know anything about Knives of Alaska, if you didn't know they existed, and if there were no markings on the blade that said D2 tool steel and made in USA, if none of that were there and I just handed you this knife, yeah, breaking the action, guys. I went to disengage the line. I don't know what I was doing. Put my thumb right here. Don't know if you know this, but I can sharpen. I just cut my thumb from about here all the way up to here, pretty deep. But the show must go on. You know what? I'm trashing this knife. It knew it. It's a woman, scorned, and it just tried to take my thumb off. But anyway, if I handed you this knife and you didn't know anything about it, and I asked you after you messed with it for a few minutes, how much do you think I paid for that? Pretty bad action, bad centering, early but rocky lockup, weird looking blade grind. What would you say? It's G10 sort of stuff. What, $15, $20, $25? That's about what it's worth. Not $79.95. Let's see, what could you get for a small, lightweight, folding hunting knife in D2 steel with green G10 that has unbelievably good action, an extremely strong lock, a nice lean blade grind, a blunt tip for working inside a chest cavity of an animal for about $80. What could we get? Now on sale at the retailers who have them left for, you guessed it, $79.95. The formerly $120 Benchmade Mini Bone Collector. Ooh. Yeah. Rock solid lockup. I'm not right-handed, but Trust me, really good action. There. Pretty good blade centering. Stonewash finish almost to a polish that's going to keep that D2 rust free. Yeah. That's what you could get for your 80 bucks, boys and girls. If you can endure the hokey logos. Yeah, real hokey. If you can endure that, you got 80 bucks to spend. You want a little packable, lightweight hunting knife. That is your knife. This thing, garbage. That's the end of Chapter 3 of the Knives of Alaska Featherlight Hunter saga. I just want you guys to know I bleed for you. I bring you money-saving, valuable information. Even endure the retaliation of, let's face it, the worst knife ever reviewed on the Apostle P channel. Yeah, so you're welcome. Grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and even a really bad knife are sharp.